We talked about the three keys to growing open source adoption in your ecosystem. And the first one was a kick ass product. The second one is making it easier than the competition. Of course, easier is always subjective, but what you want to do is you want to make sure that your product is easy for new users entering the ecosystem, as well as complex enough where advanced users can still find value in it. It's a tough balance, but easy's always going to win. So let's talk a little bit about what easy is. Easy is going to have many different components, and each one of them we'll check off in the next series of videos. So, how do we make a product easier to use? Well, I think that there are a few things that we can check off fairly quickly, especially in the software space. Number one, is it easy to install? Number two, does it have sane defaults? Things that out of the box will just work without having to have a lot of knowledge. Number three, can you automate it? Does it include tools to automate and include in existing CI/CD pipelines? Always important. Is it easy to implement it and integrate it with what you already have out there? Do you have a really good UI UX? Is it easy for a user who doesn't have a lot of tribal knowledge of your product to just go in and intuitively figure it out? And of course, does it have an easy way to debug when something does go wrong? Those five things will go a long way to making your product easier to use for your users. Focus on those and you can win. Now, easy just isn't about implementation or setting up the software or using it. It's also about making it easier to contribute, especially in the open source space. When we talk about the open source side of things, people want to contribute. They want to feel part of a project. And so how easy do you make it for people to contribute to your project? There are different ways to contribute, things like code, documentation, their knowledge, or even supporting the product through answering questions on GitHub or Jira or wherever you're hosting your software. Make sure that you make it easier for them to come into the ecosystem, contribute, and feel like they're part of it. And that can help you go a long way to increasing your adoption. When it comes to easy, a lot of easy for users starts with good READMEs, docs, and tutorials. You need to make sure that when you do have a project and you're looking to grow that adoption, you've taught people how they can use, implement, and be successful with your product. You want to make sure that they find what they need quickly and they can get in and get out without having to suffer through endless cycles of trying to find what they're looking for. And we've found that the best documentation in the world helps people adopt at least 20 times faster than the worst. So you want to make sure that you focus on great documentation, great READMEs, great tutorials, really easy to get started and be successful in a very short amount of time. Of course, it's easy to say, just create better docs. Well, of course, people will say that. But there are some things that you can do to make documentation and make your tutorials easier. A few of these things are things like explain your project in just common language. Don't use a lot of technical jargon or things that are very specific to your project or your ecosystem, because that is going to turn off potential new users. Make sure that you can explain what your project does and people can find it right off the top of the bat on the README or wherever they're looking within 10 seconds or less. A lot of people will be looking for a solution to a specific problem. They want to see what you can do. Do you fit into it? And if you can, then they'll look deeper. So start off with something very easy, very consumable. Make sure you use lots of visuals and pictures in your documentation to show how things work. And then make sure that they can easily navigate from those easy things to the more complex things or the more less mundane activities that they might need to do. And also keep in mind that not everyone coming is going to necessarily want to go through just bland documentation that is just step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure you include things like recipes or ways to solve specific common issues, because a lot of people will jump right to examples and ignore all of the kind of standard documentation. And also, you want to make sure that you've covered most of the common scenarios. You want to make sure that people who are coming in, if they're going to implement your software, you have kind of solution architectures or solution guides to solve specific real world problems that people have done with your software.